Hi, my name is Catherine, and welcome to my channel where we talk about books you should read instead of stuff you should buy. Today, I want to talk about how I retired at 32. If you're familiar with the FIRE movement, which stands for Financial Independence Retire Early, you may also be familiar with the two schools of thought on what it means to retire. The traditional concept of retirement was born out of capitalism. You work until the arbitrary retirement age, and then, if you're lucky, you drop out of the workforce. Some people in the FIRE movement define retirement in this sense, dropping out of the workforce entirely, while others define retirement as the freedom to choose how to spend their time, and often this includes working a part-time job. I am in the latter camp. I have a part-time 1099 gig selling solar, and I create content for YouTube. So I still work and receive some income, but it's work I choose to do, not work I have to do. And there is a huge difference between these two things. So let's talk about it. First, we should define what work even is. When most of us think of work, we think of a job that we are obligated to do out of the need for money to survive or maintain a certain standard of living. But this is not work. I mean, it is work, but it's more than just work. This is exploitation. No matter the economic system we live under, there's a certain amount of labor required to survive. So working to survive is not inherently exploitative. But under capitalism, if you are producing surplus value, meaning you create more value for your employer than you're compensated for as a wage, you're being exploited. All of this is to say that working a job in exchange for money is the capitalist conception of work, and capitalism is a modern construct. Work is simply exerting physical or mental effort to accomplish a task. Housework is work, though we don't get paid for it. A lot of hobbies, like writing and photography, for example, are work, whether or not you monetize them. It's not money that makes something count as work, it's effort. If you are exerting physical or mental effort to accomplish something, you're working. Work in this sense is something that we should never aim to cease doing, even in quote-unquote retirement, because work gives us a sense of purpose and accomplishment, and without those things we lose our zest for life and our health starts to decline. In my view, the goal of retirement is not to stop working. It's to build up enough financial security to shift from doing work that you are extrinsically motivated to do for a paycheck to work that you are intrinsically motivated to do for personal fulfillment or altruism. And that is where I'm at now. My husband and I were able to save up enough money to buy a house and for me to shift my focus to YouTube, which currently brings in very little income. So how exactly did we get here? Well, it was a combination of privilege, luck, focused effort, and a frugal one-planet lifestyle. My husband and I were both privileged to grow up middle class and to go to college without financial stress. I graduated without any student loan debt because I lived in Georgia and qualified for the Hope Scholarship. My husband did take out student loans, but he was able to secure a six-figure job right out of school to pay them off. We were both lucky in the sense that we found each other and found jobs that were relatively high-paying. After I graduated, I moved to Colorado with $3,000 to my name, which I had saved up from working two jobs, one as a waitress and one at a daycare. I didn't think I had lucrative skills, and all I wanted to do was activism, so I was kind of resigned to not making very much money. I got a job at Panera Bread and mentioned this to one of my coworkers, who happened to be dating a guy who worked at Greenpeace. She insisted that he could get me a job, and I didn't believe her because it sounded too good to be true, and so far I had been rejected by every nonprofit I had applied for. But I ended up getting the job, and I worked as a canvasser for 3 years. I didn't make a ton of money, but I was good at my job and made enough. Honestly, that was the most fun job I've ever had. Good times. But the good times came to an end when the pandemic hit and our office shut down. I was then unemployed for 9 months, and I developed a crippling panic disorder and could barely function. When I started working again, canvassing for Amnesty International, I decided to take it easy by only working 3 days a week, which was perfect, but temporary, as I wasn't making very much money. Through luck again, my old coworker who had gotten me the job at Greenpeace started working for Sunrun and recruited me. That was when I realized that I did have lucrative skills. It turns out that canvassing, which I was very good at, is basically sales. But instead of fundraising for a nonprofit, I was generating leads for a for-profit solar company, which pays a lot more. In combination with privilege and luck, focused effort brought us to where we are now. I say focused effort rather than hard work because I wasn't working overtime, grinding myself into the ground. I was just applying consistent, focused effort for about 28 hours a week. I also had a YouTube channel where I'd post about once a month, which wasn't nothing. It certainly felt like hard work at times, but it feels ignorant to say I worked really hard, considering there are so many people out there working much harder jobs with much more grueling hours. And the last piece of the equation that got us here was living a frugal, one-planet lifestyle. I I recommend 2 books on this topic. The first is The Day the World Stops Shopping by J.B. McKinnon, and the second is The Art of Frugal Hedonism by Adam Grubb and Annie Razor Rowland. In The Day the World Stops Shopping, McKinnon details what a sustainable lifestyle actually looks like, using the one planet metric. Essentially, if everyone lived as you do, how many Earths would we need to sustain ourselves? He has an entire chapter describing the life of the average Ecuadorian, whose lifestyle is considered globally replicable. Though we don't know exactly where we fall regarding this metric, as no such calculator exists, my husband and I strive to live as close to a one-planet lifestyle as we can reasonably estimate. We fly a few times a year to visit his family, and he flies once a quarter for work, but we're both vegan, child-free, and try to shop exclusively secondhand. We installed solar last year and intend for our next car to be electric. Keep in mind, one person's one-planet lifestyle doesn't have to look identical to another person's. You can sacrifice more in some areas to make up for consuming more in other areas. As it turns out, living this way saves you shitloads of money. I mean, obviously. Doing less and buying less saves money. Children are expensive, so not having them saves quite a bit of money. Thrifting instead of buying new saves money. Solar saves money in the long run. And contrary to popular belief, plant-based diets are actually cheaper on average. Honestly, for me, a lot of these habits were motivated by environmentalism rather than frugality. It's eco-guilt that keeps me from buying new clothes and paying for things like food delivery. This guilt helped keep me in check when I was making like $15K a month. When you're used to making $35,000 to $40,000 a year, and then suddenly you're making 6 figures, it's hard not to succumb to lifestyle inflation. Most people spend more when they start making more. But if you want to retire early, you have to fight this impulse and live below your means. This is not to say I didn't increase my spending at all. I certainly did, but not dramatically. In The Art of Frugal Hedonism, Adam Grubb and Annie Razor Rowland share their best tips for saving money, but it's not your typical finance advice. Their philosophy is all about spending less so you can work less and enjoy life more. But rather than creating a budget and tracking your spending, they suggest shifting your mindset around money entirely. Going back to the capitalist conception of work from earlier, a job that we feel obligated to do out of the need for money to survive or maintain a certain standard of living. If you are in a position of relative privilege, you can choose to reduce your work hours and retire early by voluntarily lowering your standard of living. There's another book with the same theme called Voluntary Simplicity, which I haven't read yet, but it's on my TBR list. What my husband and I realized when saving up to buy our house is that we really don't need that much money to live comfortably. And we don't need more than we have now, which is a 1,500 square foot cabin in the mountains with our 2 dogs, and money for food and the occasional outing. Rich is of course relative. There's obscenely rich, the billionaires, rich, multimillionaires, and then there's regular rich, which I would define as anybody who is spending within their means and consuming more than their fair share, meaning they're living in a way that exceeds the planetary boundaries. Some people may exceed the one planet metric, but if they're spending beyond their means and have debt, they're not exactly rich. A lot of rich people are being delusional rather than humble when they say they're comfortable rather than rich. If you hear someone say, "We're comfortable," they're probably just rich. But you can actually be comfortable but not rich by embracing voluntary simplicity. And that is my hope with this channel, to inspire people to do just that. Giving up wealth does not mean sacrificing comfort. It only feels this way if you have an inflated sense of what it means to be comfortable. You may have to readjust your idea of what it means to be comfortable and adapt to what comfortable actually means. Comfortable is having your needs met, and not just your most basic bare-bones needs like food, water, and shelter, but your emotional needs as well. You've probably heard the quote, "Earth provides enough to satisfy every man's need, but not every man's greed." And it's true. A one-planet lifestyle is sufficient to meet all of your physical and emotional needs. Living beyond a one-planet lifestyle is not comfortable, it's excessive. Approximately 60% of the global population lives in poverty, struggling to meet their basic needs. Meanwhile, there are loads of people out there who continue to work a traditional job that they don't particularly enjoy because they feel the need to maintain a standard of living that is frankly unsustainable. It's sad because they're consuming more than their fair share, contributing to the misery of others, and they're not even happy. Lately, I've been feeling very grateful and self-actualized, at least as much as I can given the state of the world. And I want this for everyone. So if you're in a position of privilege, join the voluntary simplicity movement, both for your own happiness and for others as well. Because your excessive consumption is not only keeping you from saving money and retiring early, but it's also contributing to the capitalist system that traps so many people in poverty and prevents them from ever retiring. Thank you so much for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button so you can stay tuned for future videos about books and degrowth. Alright, peace out.